We are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. We're missing a Ryan tonight, but we picked up a Dave instead.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, Dave, I love your shirt. Be nice.
Oh, thank you.
Dude.
You.
And I'll tell you what, that's those are words that the vast majority of the world could pay some attention to right now. Let me tell you. So
Absolutely.
I love it. I appreciate it very much for sure. And thank you so much for being here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Nitro Dave, aka David Vasser, the owner of Nitrous Outlet. And we're going to talk about a bunch of fun stuff tonight. Some of it's going to be nitrous, which, as regulars of the show will know, is one of my favorite things in the world. I am a fan of horsepower, and I have for a very long time said that if you're not using nitrous with your other power adders, you are leaving something on the table. And I stack power adders unless the rule says otherwise. So I've got nitrous on everything I own except the dually, basically. So it's good stuff for sure. We're going to talk about some cool stuff tonight revolving around that, but we're also going to talk about the Street Outlaws a little bit. I know we've touched on them a few times in the last couple of episodes, but they've announced a new schedule of the Street Outlaws that's not the Street Outlaws. There's like some uproar because of some of the locations they're going to, all kinds of weird stuff going on. But before we get into any of that, we're gonna talk to David and find out what's going on in the nitrous world. And you just came back from South Georgia. You were there for Donald's race.
Lights out.
Yep, and I know it was a big race. There were a lot of people there. The weather wasn't great, but did you have a good time?
I did always have a good time. I honestly, Lights Out and No Mercy are like two of my favorite races for the year. So I try not to ever miss them.
And when you're there, we were just talking before we went live, you know, that you're always working, you know, to help customers and what have you. What's an average day at Lights Out look like for you?
Man, honestly, it's a lot of running around. I have people come to the trailer for me. So the guys work the trailer. I'll pop in and out of there, but it's a lot of just running to the racer pits and checking on people. Sometimes they need my help. Sometimes they may just need me to find a part for them. And I know so many people on the premises that I'm able to put people together to keep them racing. So it just could be where I'm tuning something or turning wrenches on something or literally just hanging out.
And are you guys still doing your bottle exchange program that you guys have been doing for years and years and years?
Yeah. God, we've been doing that like over 10 years now. That's crazy. You know, that was that turned out to be a really good program, and it's gotten a lot of bottles out of circulation.
You know, the best part about that, Ted?
Go ahead, Aaron.
The best part about that is he takes those long, skinny, old blue bottles, and he makes them into toilet paper holders. I have 2 of them.
I want one, Dave. I please put me on the list. I'll take one. Dude, I'll be honest with you. You know, I have a long history, you know, working with the guys at Holly, and I've done a lot with NOS Nitrous, and you know, I've had a lot of those blue bottles, but I own several of different colors as well. And so, but one of the big things, I mean, yes, you want people to have a bottle that says Nitrous Outlet on it, but there's really a bigger reason for that, right? I mean, this is to get old bottles that may or may not have been warmed properly, et cetera, out of circulation so that people are safer, right?
You know, people, I'm really having a problem with the DFW area more so than anywhere, but people really kind of take advantage that that's a pressurized vessel, and there's a lot of neglect. These guys think that there's no repercussion for torching them. I mean, just a couple months ago, a guy in Oklahoma got killed for torching a bottle. A local buddy of mine blew his leg off and almost died, and that's what started the bottle trade-in program. You know, that's not to be taken lightly. It's a pressurized vessel. And whenever they're out of date, and they can be recertified for $30. Your life is worth $30. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So And what's bothering me right now is, especially in the DFW area, all these racers are allowed to race, and they laugh whenever you try to preach safety to them. And they're at the start line in this car, and there's 200 people around their car. Where if that bottle explodes, it's not just going to kill the driver of that car; it's going to kill everybody in the vicinity, or it's going to hurt them. The guys at the fuel stations that are filling those bottles that work at these facilities that are filling them, their life is in jeopardy. And honestly, I've really tried to get people to work with me on this, and I've hit a dead end. Some racers listen, so if I save one life, then that's great. But it's a dangerous situation. It really is. And these racers, I mean, a bottle heater element is $125. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and you can throw a wraparound element in it, and there's just so many ways to efficiently heat your bottle, which will increase the performance going down the track because it won't have, head pressure that bleeds off real fast. But the safety thing is really the thing here. And if we could get get these racers from torching these bottles and take the odor bottles and get them recertified, it's worth it. I just found out this week that carbon fiber bottles are good for 5 years now. It used to be 3 years.
Yeah.
So now you can
That's
get them
right.
certified every 5 years, just like an aluminum bottle. And it literally costs like $25-$30. Why not?
And here's the deal. Like, I race all kinds of racing, right? Obviously drag racing, everybody knows me from that, but I do road racing. We race at Bonneville. We do a lot of different stuff. At Bonneville, you've got to have fire systems. It's a requirement for any car to go down the salt. And we have to get our fire bottles recertified. Okay. And that's, nobody thinks anything about that. Like, of course we want to have them recertified. It's way cheaper than buying new bottles. Right. And they just won't let you go down the racetrack. But unfortunately, in the drag racing world, we're just not real good about forcing people. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. So nobody wants to say no to somebody that shows up to go down the track. But, if you think about the fact that a nitrous bottle is under an extreme amount of pressure, right? Going down the racetrack, when you stage that car somewhere in the 900 plus, PSI range, right? So people think about that when you think, oh, torch, that's bad, right? The high pressure. But what they're not thinking about is that the metallurgy that's happening here, right? So aluminum is hard, quote unquote, to bend and shape, right? You can bend it, but it doesn't really go the way you want it to, and this and that, right? So if you're forming aluminum for anything, that's going to be a complex shape, you anneal it, right? So that involves heating that aluminum to a certain level that is not hot. Okay. It really is not. It's just a very light heating. And then it becomes really malleable, right? Really easy to shape, English wheel, whatever you may want to do with it. Well, if you're doing that to a bottle, okay, then that means that you're creating weak areas in that thing where it's trying to stretch and move and all that. And unfortunately, you may not even know that it's damaged because there's a wrap on that bottle, right? You can't see the metal of the bottle, right? Because it says Nitrous Outlet on it, or NOS, or Zex, or whoever, right? It's just not a good idea. And I will tell you, I'm not going to lie. I have torched a nitrous bottle or two.
That too, before I knew better.
Yes. And I just won't do it. And here's the thing too. So bottle heaters, there are several options, right? One of your options is, like you said, Dave, a wrap style blanket, right? It's super easy. It wraps right around. You can get them 110 powered or 12 volt. The only thing that I would say is that if you're going to wire a 12 volt one, be very deliberate in how you wire it so that you don't leave it on accident. Okay. But there are a bunch of other ways to do it.
have 20 volts now.
Yeah, the 20 volt is the way to go because you can power it off a drill battery.
We're the only company that has the 20 volt elements. We did that because the drill batteries were desoldering the wires on the 12 volt.
On the 12 volt. Yeah, because people are using them. Yeah. I love that, Dave. The other thing that I like to use is a sous vide warmer, which is sous vide is a cooking method for those that don't know out there watching, where you put like a steak in a bag raw, and you season it, you put it in this plastic bag, it's all like shrink wrapped. You put it in this water that is at like 130 degrees, okay, which is what medium rare temperature would be, right? Well, it cooks in there for hours and it makes the steak perfectly cooked all the way through. And then when it's done, you take it out of the bag and you sear it real quick to make it brown and eat it, and it's delicious, right? Well, the beauty is that the warmer that you use for that is a thing that looks like a submersion blender, and it's got a little tiny circulator pump and a heating element in it. And if you put that in an ice chest, and you let it sit there and warm the water, you pull your bottle out and stuff it in there, and it gives this amazingly uniform heat. It is so good. I am telling you, folks. And you can buy a sous vide like pump warmer thing for like 40 or $50
You just
on
took away
Amazon
of
now.
explaining that, because we do the hot water bath. We're actually the company. So 860 Performance, which is the company we bought, designed and brought to market the hot water bath. Remember, they used to have the hot box and the circulated hot air.
Yes.
It wasn't effective. Well, Vinny made the hot water bath, and so
Yep.
I purchased that company for him for 2 or 3 designs, that being one of them. And so that hot water bath just works just like a hot tub. I tell people it brings your core temp down and it saturates your body with heat, right? Does the same
Yes.
thing with the nitrous bottle. So you got an effective heat that doesn't have a substantial amount of head pressure. And then you put it in the car, put your heater element on, wrap it with a blanket, and you
Yep.
just use your heater element to maintain in the lanes.
Exactly. Instead of trying to bring the temp up.
Right.
And I have to tell you, the first time that I ever saw a hot water bath was at West Tech Performance in Southern California. And Rick, who owned West Tech, had built his own, with
Yep.
the thermostat and everything. And I was so blown away by how effective it was. You could take a bottle that was cold and plunk it into that, warm water bath. And oh my God, it was really quick. And they ended up finding out that at West Tech, they never paid attention to bottle pressure anymore, right? You filled a bottle, you knew it was at weight, so it's full. And then what they did was determined what temperature the bottle needed to be at every time, and that would make the pressure be dead on right. And it's awesome. I mean, it makes it really good. So please, folks, be smart, right? Get good brackets to hold your bottles in. They suck when they fly around. That is not a good thing. And then, get a bottle heater and get a bottle blanket. Like you said, you have really nice looking bottle blankets, which not only keep the bottle warm, but also keep the sun from beating on them in through the window of the car and heating them up too high.
And those guys that are being cheap could use a beach towel.
Yes, true.
You know what I mean? Like there's ways of doing this effectively without spending money.
Right. There are. And I'm gonna share your page here, the Nitrous Outlet page, so that you can see what we're talking about here when we're talking about a hot water bath, right? So this unit here, okay, is a 2-bottle heater, and you sit your heaters in there, fill it with water, plug it in, and set the temp, and you're good to go. This one also, but it's for bigger bottles. I like that because I like big bottles. Yeah. And the funny thing is, this element here, okay, these elements that are for the hot water bath, these are the same kind of thing that are used in an RV water heater. Okay. These are very reliable. They are very durable. They will last for a very long time. But if you had to get a new one, they're not expensive. Right. So, and if, like you said, if this is outside somebody's price range, I kind of question how it is you're racing, but if it is, then make your own. Like, dude, make your own from, something else, a big pot, whatever.
Absolutely.
Like, you can do it,
And hey, those guys, back to the bottle trading program, those guys that have bottles that are just beat to hell, torched, or crappy valve, or whatever it may be, we'll give them $100 for that bottle, and then we'll make a toilet paper holder out of it.
Right.
You know,
Well, and so tell the exchange program, you give them $100 toward their new bottle, right?
correct. So towards the
And so what
purchase.
is it? So what does a 10-pound bottle cost them if they get $100 off?
Oh my gosh, we just did a price change and all of our stuff went down. I know that sounds crazy right now, but we did this huge price update over December, and it went live January 20th. And so many of our prices changed that, like a 10-pound bottle used to be $300. Let's look, it was $320. What is it now?
301. Oh,
There you
that's
go.
with the high flow valve too.
Yeah, that's a 508,000th ID valve. It will move some nitrous. So it was
Yep.
so crazy because whenever all this tariff stuff just happened, we knew that. So the warehouses that we deal with, like Summit and Jegs and Myers, you have to give them a 30-day notice on a price increase or price change.
Right.
And so over December, you know, we skipped PRI and we restructured the company, and we literally went in and see when our manufacturing time was for everything we did. And we logged it, and we figured out what margins we need, and we did a complete price restructure. And to my surprise, it brought all the prices down, which freaked me out because the last 2 years were a real struggle. But we're staying true with it, and we're hoping that people look at the quality that we have in the price structure, and we're hoping that we increase volume.
I love it. I love it.
Too. I got a question
Yep.
Yeah.
for Dave. So in the last, we'll just call it 8 to 10 years, with the emergence of fast EFI, poly EFI, I forget the Australian one off the top of my head. But with that innovation, it made especially boost power more prevalent. How has that helped the nitrous world, or has it hurt it, or
It's only hurt one area of the nitrous world. So let's talk about where it's helped. For one, a lot of guys have realized the advantage of nitrous with boosted applications. And the way I explain it to boosted guys that are just mind blocked is, when does your turbo or your nitrous run the best? When you have good air. So if you think about nitrous as air molecule, improved air molecule, that gets it to them. Oh, okay. Whenever you get up in those altitude levels, especially for the guys that like to drag and drive, or these guys that travel for races, and they get to an area where they just don't want to build boost, something as small as a 50 shot or a 35 shot will put that thing instantly up in boost. And it's because we're giving it air. Now, obviously, if we want to increase the power, it's as simple as changing a $5 jet, right? And now we got more power too. So if you hit an application where you're just out of turbo or out of blower and you need a little bit more power, we can do it for $5, you know? So it's more about the air molecule. Now, where the reason why EFI has helped that is because it's made it so much easier to tune these applications. And it's added so many safeguards that in many cases, you got to be a real bonehead to tear something up, and it's still doable, obviously, for the guys more that are pushing the applications for racing, you know, and they're very competitive. They're going to hurt it every now and then. It's just part of it. But where it's hurt us is in our nitrous controller cells. And so to give you an idea, I'm sitting on like $300,000 worth of Burnouts controllers because the cells have slowed down on them. And the reason why the cells have slowed down on them is because all those functions are built into these late model EFI applications. So the guys that are buying the nitrous controllers are mostly all street cars at this point, and the more complex nitrous controllers really aren't as desirable to a guy that's only spraying 150 shot whenever he can just use a window switch.
Or the grid or whatever else. Yeah.
Yeah, you get over to the carbureted world. Well, the grid's not going to do your nitrous control, but it'll do your timing. So then you would add the Burnouts. So if you're carbureted, you're still going to need that. But whenever you get over into this EFI stuff, all the nitrous controls are built in it. You don't need our controller. So that's hurt our controller cells tremendously.
Oh, we lost Chad.
So my phone keeps blowing up, and I think it's interfering it.
When does your phone not blow up?
Man, it's nonstop. Like my wife was on me tonight about the fact that I've stacked so much up. Like the reason why I'm sitting out in the shop is because I'm actually getting the trailer ready because I'm supposed to be at the track tomorrow at noon. And I'm taking my car, and it's the first time I've been out with it in 3 years. So Madman's coming down, and we're gonna get the suspension right, and we're gonna run coaches 490 class this weekend.
Nice. Is that an XRP or NS or?
XRP.
Okay.
So Popeye's putting on an overdrive race. So it's a bunch of fast late model EFI cars, which is really cool. And then Coach jumped in and put together a 490 index class. We had to take a lot of nitrous jet out to slow it down to 490, but the motor that's in my car is tired, and it's fresh, but it's the first gen LSX block, and the cylinders are distorted. So the school had a problem getting it to hone. So I don't know how long it's going to last, but so Thompson Motorsports is building me another short block for it right now. So I really don't want to lean on it until that short block's ready.
Another question I had was
about this
regarding nitrous and the EFI. Are you seeing more dry systems now than wet?
Yeah, you know what's funny about that is back in the day, I would never really push dry kits in the stock computer stuff. I preferred wet. Now almost on your new cars, your EFI cars, I'm still pushing wet, right? Stock ECU stuff, I prefer to have a wet system. Now, whenever I get into this late model EFI, it blows my mind when somebody calls and says, "Hey, I have a fuel tech or I have a Holley Dominator and I'm going to run a wet kit." I'm like, "Why?" You know, like, why? Like the nitrous controls in these EFI systems is so you just need a good fuel pump and good injectors, and the rest is history, you know. And and there, I think what it is a lot of people are intimidated by the tuning aspect of it. But once you spend some time and learn it, man, it is the way to go.
I'll tell you, I run Holley EFI on most of my stuff, and it's so much fun to use nitrous with a standalone EFI system. We had my wife's 400-inch small block in a station wagon. At one point, we had 3 kits on it. Not because it needed 3 kits, but to show what you could do with the system, right? And God, it worked out so awesome. It was amazing, and it was really fun. We would go down the road. We'd be live streaming, go down the road on one of these drag and drives, and I'd be going and walking people through. The other thing that I think is just wonderful about all the standalone systems, and also your systems, okay, any of the programmable progressive systems, is the safeties that are built in, right? So people are afraid of nitrous, which there's no reason to be afraid of nitrous. If you follow the jet charts, if you do all those things, it'll be fine, right? But in addition, the safeties that are involved in all the progressive systems and everything are great, right? If the thing's too fat, it shuts the nitrous off. If it's too lean, it shuts the nitrous off. It's really, really, really great. And if you're lost, okay, I mean, we do drag and drives all over the country, right? So, we end up in Denver. I don't know what the hell to do in Denver. I mean, the tune-up's so screwy there, right? So I put what I thought it needed. Well, the car leaves and it's spraying to, 400 feet, and then the nitrous shuts off, right? And then at 1,000 feet, it comes back on. Well, you go back and you look at the data log and you can see right there, oh, the thing got lean and it shut the nitrous off. Well, you go, well, how lean was it? Like, what was it tracking? And you go in and you add fuel to it, and you can use it as a tuning tool. And I know it sounds funny, but that's just another good way to learn, right? And
the only thing it can't do yet is timing. You got to be in the ballpark on timing.
You do have to be in the ballpark on timing, but you and I both know too that people always, like, we joke and say, "Hey, throw 5 degrees at it," and and a couple hundred. Obviously, you're going to pull timing out of the thing, but at the mellow levels where people are in the 100 to 200 horsepower range, really, I mean, you're only going to pull a couple of degrees of timing, and you just need to make sure you have good fuel in the thing, and you'll be in good shape. And if you have EFI and you have all this where you can control your timing, great. But even if you don't, if you needed to go the most basic, right? Like my buddy Stuart Clifton is in the chat right now, and we were talking about adding 150 shot to his car for Mega Week this year. If you don't have the money right now or the ignition system where you can just turn a knob or you can trigger a retard, all you have to do is mark your distributor where you're at on your normal timing and then make some marks on it at 2 degrees retarded, 4 degrees retarded, 6 degrees retarded, whatever. And that way, when you get to the racetrack, retard the timing the 2 degrees if you're going to spray it with 100 or whatever. You know what I mean? And it'll be fine. Will it be as ideal as it is if you had, this great timing curve? No, but it will make it safe and it will work and you'll be good to go and you can enjoy the fun of nitrous. And I am telling you folks, it's fun. It's great. It really is smiles in a bottle.
Right.
I think it gets a bad rap mostly because people don't educate themselves, and the other, especially racers, they get lazy.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, I'm running top dragster. I got a jug on it, and you know what? I need to move up qualifying spots. I just turn it on. I don't flow the fuel system. I don't check all the stuff I should check, and I don't have like a hob switch or something else. I just get lazy with it, and that's when you hurt parts.
It is, but I will say that I think the biggest mistake people make is not timing versus fuel versus any of those things. I think what the key is, they don't listen to the guy that makes the system, right? Because if you follow the jetting and the timing recommendations that that Nitrous Outlet will give you and every other manufacturer, okay, then if you follow those, it's really, really simple,
It's safe.
And it is safe. Exactly. It is absolutely safe. I'll tell you, an engine that runs with some nitrous through it is the most wonderful engine to rebuild when it is time because it's clean inside.
Right.
There isn't carbon on everything. It's so nice. It's great.
Unless you put a hole through the piston.
Right. Let's just melt it.
True. But you have to work at that. You have to be spraying a lot, and you have to really be being aggressive to have that kind of a failure, right?
Yeah. So, on the base tune-ups, though, I mean, the majority of the base tune-ups are so safe that you can typically put an extra half degree of timing or whatever in it, or you can lower your fuel pressure a little bit. You can lean it out a little bit and gain a little bit of power. I mean, they're just that safe.
Well, let me back up on that real quick. So,
okay.
Over the years, all these manufacturers have used a jetting calculator to calculate their flow charts. And the problem with that is it can't take into consideration the 90-degree fittings in the system, the turns. So that's really where we shine because we offer vehicle-specific systems. And I'm not just trying to throw a sales pitch out there. I'm trying to educate here.
Absolutely.
We actually flow all of our tune-ups. So our competition actually tells people to use our jet cards. And the reason why is because they are like the closest in the industry. And why that's very important is because when you're trying to decide how much timing to take out, you need to have the right numbers. Otherwise, that's when you're going to hurt it. And so those jet cards for our systems are so like if we design a system for a late model Mustang and it's got 90-degree fittings in it and it's got this and it's got that, we actually put that system on the flow bench. We actually float it. And so that jetting card is literally geared for those components. So these guys that are mismatching components, that can change that flow. You know what I mean? So those are all things to think about. I'm not against mismatching stuff. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get to the racetrack. But our jet cards are probably the closest I'm not going to say probably, they are the closest in the industry. And they're there because of the homework we put into it. It's not a jet calculator. It is the flow bit. That's what created them.
One of the things that I've, found over the years as I, fell more and more in love with nitrous is that with the proper tune, it's unbelievable how much nitrous you can stuff through an engine, right? And, you know, Richard Holdner and I did a deal where we brought one of the Street Outlaws out to West Tech one time, and we did a little competition. 2 LS engines that literally made within 2 horsepower of the same of each other, 2 5.3s, and we battled it out to see you know, how much nitrous could these things take, and with not any concern if they broke, right? Like if they broke, it was all right that they broke, and they were stock rods and pistons, camshaft, you know, headers, nothing fancy at all. And it's funny, but we ultimately ended up spraying near 300 horsepower on each of those engines. And in fact, what we were doing to verify that the thing wasn't hurt after each run was we would spray it for a pull, and then we would put the timing back in it, and we would run it NA again and make sure that it backed up its previous horsepower number, right? So we weren't hurting the thing. And what was really funny is that on the very last run that we did with the engine on nitrous, like the all hail, let's see what it'll do pull, we forgot to pull the timing. Somebody forgot to hit the enter button. And so it did not pull the whatever it was, you know, 10 degrees that it was supposed to. It did not hurt it. I'm sure that there were a few really, really, really clean pistons because I'm sure it wasn't real happy. And keep in mind, that's on an engine dyno, and that pull is considerably faster than what a pull would be in your actual car, right? So I wouldn't recommend that, but it just goes to show you, you know, this stuff, it's not like it was in the 60s. Like we're in 2025. The technology, the quality of nitrous now is consistent, all of those things, and it makes for a much more pleasurable experience when you're first getting into nitrous. I tell everybody, if you're looking for the quickest, easiest, simplest way to add 100, 150, 200 horsepower, you don't have to crack the engine open. Just get a nitrous kit and go. Because the other thing about that is a nitrous kit is not a wasted purchase. It's not like you buy it. Oh, I'm going to buy it so I get 150 horsepower. And then later I put a cam and cylinder heads and this and that. And then, oh, I don't get to use the nitrous anymore. It will still keep adding 150 or 200 to whatever it is you're making NA. And that's why it's such a great deal. And don't get me wrong, nitrous is considerably more expensive per pound than it used to be, and all of that. But at low, you know, 150, 200 horsepower range, you're not using a lot of nitrous, right? You're not going to go through bottles and bottles and bottles, you know, every night or every weekend. So it ends up being, you know, a fun, cost-effective way to really make a big difference in your horsepower level.
Oh, absolutely. And then, because I know Dave won't self-promote this, but I took a tour through Nitrous Outlet a couple years ago. They make their own wiring harnesses. They have flow supply. They have 860. They have meth heads. I mean, he's got a lot of cool stuff that they do there. And if you want to touch on that, Dave.
We do a lot of people don't realize we do more than just nitrous. You know, the big thing I'm excited about, so we have flow supply. Flow supply does a bunch of custom stuff like burn down tanks, catch tanks, all your boost tubing, V-band clamps. People come in and go, I had no idea you had this. But we also have hoses and fittings, and we're pushing the product line to grow. Like right now, we're working towards designing some real flexible, all the way up to 20 AN PTFE style convoluted hose and race fitting. So there's certain things we're pushing there to keep growing. But what I'm really eager about right now is the meth heads, and I like to compare meth heads to Nitrous Outlet, the nitrous industry, because when we entered the nitrous industry, all these companies had done R&D wise is copy each other. None of them had invested in and product creation to resolve the known issues of tuning flaws within the system. I tend to shine there because of being out in the racing industry and tuning on things and looking at things and thinking, how do I resolve this within the design process? And so I understand atomization and fuel and nitrous delivery really well. And we've been putting that over into the meth heads design, and we're not rushing it to market. We've been working with the racing industry behind the scenes for about 2 years now. I don't like the bypass pump systems that everybody's using, the 190 psi bypass water pump that they're using. It, in my opinion, it's a piece of shit, even the best one. And I don't like the technology behind it. I don't like the technology behind the Mr. nozzles. I don't know if you know this, but it came from the food industry to wash, like at chicken, processing places, to wash all those guts and shit down. It's just a water Mr. nozzle, like what you see at a restaurant. The parts in these systems are very not perfect for the application they're being used in. And then these other companies are pushing these guys to put direct ports in so they can get some extra cells out of it, whenever really the whole purpose is to knock the air temps down. So you really need to be further back in the air intake, not putting a direct port on it, because all we're doing is drowning the cylinder and we're burning it up. And there's so many. So the nitrous industry was the same way. And it's because so many companies are just interested in selling product. They're not interested in spending the money to resolve the conflicts of what is there for the racer. And that's, and not to my own horn, but that's something we really shine at. And so we're not rushing into this industry right now. Wherever we release our product line, it is going to completely flip the industry upside down. The amount of time and money I have invested in it right now is unreal, and it was the wrong time to do it going into the last 2 years. I don't know what everybody else felt, but I felt like we were in a recession. And I'm going to tell you, Nitrous Outlet struggled the worst it's ever struggled in a long time.
Election years suck.
Yeah, they do. But, you've how do and I mean this as a compliment, but you're doing this the hard way, right? Me and Aaron have had the conversations about this, right? You're manufacturing everything you possibly can in the United States. And that's a tough deal. I wanted to touch on that a little bit if you're comfortable with it.
Absolutely. I'm an open book.
The challenges, everybody knows the challenges of manufacturing in the United States, right? Even though we live in Texas, which is a pretty loose with regards to regulations and what have you, you still have to acquire materials. American-made materials are more expensive. With the tariffs that have been announced on aluminum and steel, right? I didn't do a story on Bang Shift on it, but I've had a couple of interviews with some industry leaders and some people whose business is importing and exporting aluminum and steel. And quite frankly, I didn't want to get into writing an article about it on the site because I knew it would make people get political, and that's not the point. But in the United States right now, we are at max capacity for steel production. We cannot produce another pound of steel in the United States of America, and we haven't been able to for 10 years. Actually, more like 15. And that's not going to change in the next 5 years plus. It's just not. Aluminum, we were running at about 60% capacity in this country on manufacturing aluminum until this year when one of the largest smelters in the country up in Missouri closed down. And so the rest of the industry is going to try and catch up. But again, we're finding ourselves in the same spot that we're in with steel. We cannot manufacture more aluminum in this state or in this country right now. And so that means that the price on all of these materials will continue to go up. How do you guys deal with that? Because it's got to be really expensive if you say, hey, man, aluminum's cheap right now. We should buy $1 jillion worth. Well, you're not a billionaire. So, so how do you do that? How do you make the justification to stockpile materials or not or whatever? I mean, how does that work?
Man, it's a real balancing act. So, like, here's a great example. Catalina is the company we buy all of our aluminum bottles from.
Yeah.
And they sent us a notification. So they import their aluminum. I can't remember if it was from Canada or Mexico. But whenever all the tariffs were going crazy 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, they sent us a letter that the price is going to go up on aluminum nitrous bottles again because they import the materials. So, you know, it's a balancing act. I believe in made in the USA. Here's the problem with it. There is no accountability for the companies that are purchasing overseas products and calling it made in the USA. I have had my competitors' products shipped to my door, and on their website is a nice, pretty bottle bracket that says made in the USA. And their Chinese company mistook Nitrous Outlet for nitrous, whatever it is, and shipped it to us. There's no accountability for that. It pisses me off. We make our billet bottle brackets right here in Waco, Texas. There are stuff that I import. Bottle valves are a great example. We design the big flow, high flow bottle valves that are out there. I cannot get a U.S. company to touch that bottle valve for what it needs to be made for because they retail for a little over $100. It's not rocket science that we need to be able to machine it and have it ready to go for $50, right?
Right.
So there's not a U.S. company that will hand me that bottle valve, anodized, laser etched, and finished for $50. Here's the problem with using that Chinese company. For one, whenever you try to explain to them that the nylon that's on the thing is too hard of a durometer, he don't get it, right?
Right.
But also, whenever you take and design that valve and you send it to him, he sends it to all your competitors and he goes, I make you bottle valves, right? And then all your work, you know?
Right.
And their website says made in the USA. You know why? Because it's assembled in the USA. I feel like there should be a difference in an accountability that should say assembled in the USA instead of made in the USA, but there isn't. And I have went through the process of hiring lawyers to make accountability, and there's no accountability. There's nothing you can do about it, and that sets the retail value, and that makes it hard on machine shop owners here in the U.S. that is trying to build a nice product. And I'm not saying that overseas products are junk, because if you get the right company making it, it's just as good as getting made here, if not better.
Agreed.
But I do believe in these tariffs, because what that's going to change is that's going to even the playing field. Now, the reason we don't like it as American people is because it's going to take more money out of our wallet to buy something. But if the tariffs are there, it's going to cost you the same to buy a Chinese part versus having one made right here in Waco, Texas. So it does leave now, if the U.S. would hold accountable to these companies that were making over there and calling it made in the USA, because there are people that want to buy made in the USA product, and they go, I only buy made in the USA product. They would shit their guts out if they came to realize that it's not made in the USA. They were misled. And that is 90% of the performance industry.
Well, and you know, it's funny you say that, Dave, because another thing that, and this one isn't directly anybody's fault, but there are even American commodities, right? Like raw materials, like aluminum and steel. Some of it is recycled products that are brought into the United States, and they are melted down, and then they are put into an extrusion, and that extrusion is then sent off to your company. And I'm saying your company, but I'm just using you as the example. And you cut it into chunks and machine it into widgets, and there you go. But not all of the aluminum in that aluminum may have originated in the United States, or very likely a bunch of it was virgin aluminum that was made into aluminum cans or something, right? And then ends up all over the world and then gets recycled, and then we buy it back and bring it in. So it was American, but then it wasn't American, and then now it is American, and it's, you know, and you can't know, you just can't know all the life cycle of every bit of that material, right? So you have to take it at face value, but you need to make sure, like you said, that the things we can hold people accountable, they are, and we're not doing that. You're right.
Let me touch on something. So there's like three different things here. we're maxed out on steel. The reason we're maxed out on steel is because we have overregulation by the EPA compared to every other country in the world. I mean,
Yeah.
I believe in clean air. I do. I'm not saying I don't. But the problem is we have overregulation. We're trying to be the cleanest country in the world, but we're buying all the stuff from China, which there are no regulations on clean air. You know what? Last time I checked, the jet stream goes right across us from China. So
Yeah.
what's that tell you? You know, the other thing is in the gear world, 90, I would say probably 95% of the gears that are readily sold in the U.S. aftermarket are made in India, Taiwan, Korea. Your pro gears are mostly made in Italy. So, I mean, U.S. Gear stopped making gears a number of years ago when they got sold. And then they just started up making pro gears again here in the U.S. So, but that's besides Gleason and a couple other exotic gear companies that you can't afford. Your regular gears out there, you're buying something that's offshore. You are. You know, Timken's a global company. You may get a Timken USA bearing, you might get a Timken India bearing, you might be a Timken Mexico, it might be Timken Brazil. And the reason for that is that basically we made so many constraints. I liken it to like Cali's. Okay. I remember when Cali's was 100% US made. Okay. In order to compete with Eagle and Scat and everybody else, they had to come up with their Dragon Slayer line, and they had to basically come up with ways to be competitive in the market with these cheaper lines. And so they did. And I don't blame them for doing it. It's still a quality product, and it's a forging from overseas that they come in and they machine. And I can't fault any company for doing that, but this, you know, and I believe, you know, made in the USA just like Dave does. But to think that you're going to buy everything made in the USA, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
It isn't, because we live in a global society nowadays, and I agree with you, and I agree with Dave. I've worked for a lot of multinational companies and the high tech world for years and years and years, and I can tell you that, you know, I'm very fond of saying that shit is shit and good stuff is good stuff, regardless of where it's made, right? So I've told this story on this show multiple times. How, you know, 2 years ago, I built a mezzanine in my shop that's 32 feet long, 10 feet wide, and, you know, 8.5 feet tall. And I built every single bit of it except one piece is American steel, and it was shit. It was absolute crap. And it came straight out of Pennsylvania. And it was junk steel. Now, structurally, is it okay? Yes. But as a guy who's been welding since he was 6 years old and is now 52 years old, okay, I know good steel. It took an ungodly amount of time and energy and sanding discs to prep that steel to be ready to weld. The mill scale on it was horrible. And if you're not a metals person, it doesn't sound right when I say this, but crappy mill scale is gummy. Okay. And that doesn't make sense to you, again, if you're not a metals person and you're not used to grinding on steel, but it does. It gets gummy and it glazes up discs and it just ruins everything. And you can't weld on it because it's junk. It's metal. It's impurities, right? And this metal was horrible. So my next mezzanine, I built another one that was 8.5 feet by 16 feet. And I built it 100% from Mexican steel, and it welded beautifully, and it was so much nicer material. Now, does that mean that every bit of steel that comes out of Pennsylvania is junk? No, it does not. It means that what I got was junk and I didn't like it. Okay. But it doesn't matter what country it comes from. What matters is that you need to take pride in the product, and it needs to be good, and good is good and shit is shit.
I get it. We go through the same thing with intake castings.
Oh yeah. Here's the thing too. If you are a manufacturer and your first priority is the biggest profit margin you can get, you are not going, you may make a lot of money in the short term, but you are not going to be around for the long term. because the quality matters. That is what will drive your product to survive. You know,
The other thing that's killed companies also is the conglomerations. And corporations need to make money. Don't get me wrong, but you look at the comp group, you look at Holly. You know, they've gobbled up a lot of good companies, and I'll just say it, the quality has gone downhill on some of the product lines because they just look at the bottom dollar. They don't look at the, you know, I'll use McLeod clutches as an example. McLeod used to be the top of the game for a twin disc clutch. When they sold out, it was a family operation. When they sold out, they had issues, and the product has survived and it's gotten better. But I mean, the first few years they tried to source a bunch of stuff that wasn't good.
I think we've seen that a lot in the performance industry over the years, especially as the big conglomerates have bought these smaller companies out.
So Dave, let me ask you this. When I look at your products, right, and whether it's methods, you know, whether it's, you know, obviously nitrous outlet, or flow supply, and I'll use flow supply because that's biting off the you know, job of building fittings is a big deal. I you know, I lived in Southern California for a long time. Bonico is in Southern California. They make all of their fittings in the United States right there in SoCal. I loved having them there because I could just go down and buy fittings right there at their shop. And when I had some really stupid thing I was trying to make go together, they would custom make me fittings and whatever. But that's not an easy business to be in. There's a lot of machining steps, and then anodizing, and then laser etching, and all the things. How big of a challenge is that business for you guys?
So you know so what a lot of people don't realize is, first of all, I know Bonico, Tom, and Brett, and all those guys. I have a great relationship with them, and I've known them for years.
Yeah.
And so they're actually a good example. You know, all these companies. There's very few companies that are advertised as hoses and fittings that are making them in the U.S. right now. And the reason why is it's just hard to compete with the current prices of those products and make that here, especially with anodizing, like Aaron touched base on the EPA. There's so many regulations that raise the cost, and there's so much. And Americans are lazy. We pay ourselves very well. We're not working for 5 cents an hour, right? But I'll be the first to tell you that our hoses, hose ends and fittings are not made in the U.S. You just couldn't do it. You couldn't stay alive and do it.
Right.
But we don't advertise them as made in the U.S. But that company that's making those fittings for me has made fittings for Nitrous Outlet for 15 years. The quality is awesome. And we use a matte black finish, which is completely different than everybody else because I don't like the high gloss black. But, you know, I've also had Bonico make fittings for me over the years.
Yeah.
And other than the anodized finish, you set those fittings side by side, you're not going to see a difference.
And I'm glad you say that because it's not a matter of whether or not you have to make every single thing here. It's being honest about it and still ensuring that the quality is there. I love it. I have to tell you. And you know, I'm not far from you. In fact, I'm actually going to go to Austin sometime in the next few days because I just bought some stuff at an auction and I have to go down there to pick it up. I'll hit you up because we may need to stop by and come for a little tour or whatever on the way back. You know, we're in Waxahachie, so we're not far, you know.
Yeah. I walk people through our facility all the time. It's very rare to see a manufacturer willing to film like we do in the warehouse and walk through and show what's going on. And it's because we're an open book. If you ask me where something comes from, if it's made, I may not tell you exactly where it comes from because that's the hardest part of doing what we do is figuring out where to get it made. But I'll tell you whether it's made in the USA or not. I'll tell you that what I do like about these tariffs, while it will affect our hose ends and fittings, guess what? If it keeps going up to where it was, that shit will get made right here in the U.S.
Right. Yeah, that's true. You know, there is if things work out the way that everybody would like them to, then in the long run, yes, we can end up with where we're moving manufacturing back here. You know, but I'll tell you one of the problems we have nowadays, and you and I both know this. We have a lot of companies in the industry that use the term machinists, that they employ a bunch of machinists. And you and I both know that 99.999% of the people that are operating CNC machines in the United States today are not machinists. And yeah, they are button pushers. And don't get me wrong, I don't know how to do it. I'm not saying it's not a skill. But I have friends that are real machinists, and I can give them a drawing or say, I need a thing to fit in here, and they can measure it and put it in a Bridgeport and make it. And that's a machinist. Okay. That is not the same thing as CNC machining.
That's what we have. Finding manual machinists that I can walk in there and draw something on a piece of paper and say, make this. Very
It's
rare.
hard.
I have that in our building. And I'm going to tell you that between him and his uncles, the science that we have here in Waco. So Colt has been with me almost 12 years. I don't care what you give him and Cliff, they will design it, they will make it. You know, then I got Tate and DH. That room of talent is just unreal. But if it's something that's above our head, Colt's uncles and dad own the CNC shop here in Waco that makes all of our stingers and all of our plates and stuff.
Yeah.
And between the group of us, we were able to come up with some off the wall shit and then make it happen. You know, and that's the reason the designs that we have work so well. And then I have another machine shop here in Waco that makes all of our EFI plates for our billet bottle brackets. And so I can't employ that knowledge. I can't afford to. You know,
Right.
because they're doing aerospace, they're doing oil industry. That we're a very, whenever it comes to their profit margin, we're a very small part. They're making our shit because they love to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love that though. I love that. Okay, so hold on. I want to pause this conversation a little bit, and I want to ask you some completely off the wall questions.
All right.
And we're going to start doing this every time we have a guest on the show. We're going to ask them some weird questions. So first off, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Vanilla. I'm boring.
No, you do know that according to psychologists, risk takers are the ones that are most likely to like vanilla ice cream over chocolate.
I did not know that. Todd, you know that?
Yeah.
So he just said that according to psychologists, people that prefer vanilla ice cream are more out to take chances.
Yeah.
So my son
is
very intelligent, and he's into all that psychology and makes.
Look it up. It's pretty interesting. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So then my next question is, what is the all in, if you could have one car in your life, what would it be?
This Nova sitting behind me.
God, I love you so much right now.
So I'm like, so I have, you can't see in my shop, it's a mess. I have all these cars tore apart, and the reason why that's sitting there covered up is because I don't want to scratch it. So I'm trying to get all this other crap bolted back together so I can work on it.
I love it.
Is
Okay,
it
and my last one, and then I'm going to let Aaron ask if he has any weird ones. And nitrous cannot be your answer. Okay. So what is your second favorite power adder?
Pro Charger.
Or let me rephrase it. What is your favorite power adder to add nitrous to? How's that?
Pro Charger. And I also like the root style blowers that come on the late model EFI cars.
Yeah.
It's just something about it, and you add a little bit of nitrous, and it's just a fun car to drive. But I'm going to tell you, my little S10 made me a believer. So here's what I like about a centrifugal blower. The power is like nitrous. It's there, you know, and so I have an F1X on my little S10, and then I had an F1A94, and I had 300 shot on a direct port and 300 on a button to push people out. And I'm going to tell you, that thing was an absolute blast to drive before I flipped it. Obviously, I flipped it because I threw too much power out. And so I put an F1X on it, and they told me I needed to take some nitrous out of it, and I did. And I was at a track that I've never raced down, And right where the track changed from concrete to asphalt, I was really getting after it, and it got away from me. But that power, to answer your question, is like a nitrous kit, and I love it.
Well, Dave, you and I are going to have some fun on my project because the car that I am building, that is a car I've had for years, but that I'm making into my drag and drive and no prep car, is F1X Pro Charger, small block delay, and obviously nitrous as well. So we need to talk on that one because I love that you've already had that combo, and I'm with you. I'm a fan of any power adder, but I really love centrifugal with nitrous. So
That combo made about 1,500 horsepower on E85.
yep. Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just, and I would go to the track and check the plugs one time. My tune-up was where it was. I didn't pull the plugs the rest of the time. That's unheard of.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying. I like having the ability to grab the button if I'm at half track and I'm like, oh, I need this, or I want to run a number and the thing's great. I want to be able to grab the button, right? And so, turbo guys are, use a scramble button or whatever. I want an extra kit on the button, so I love it.
I do think I'm about, so on the other side over here, I have another truck that I bought, another S10. And I'm actually I'm putting fuel tech in it. And I've been talking to Roger at Hart's. And I think I'm going to do a turbo LS in it, just because I don't know anything about turbos.
Why not?
I've never built a turbo car. I've never been a turbo fan. I don't like the whole spooling thing. Like I like the power. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about doing it just for the flow supply product line. To increase my knowledge to help me design better products.
I love it. Okay, so Aaron, I want you to ask a question to Dave if you've got one. But Doug DeLay asked in the chat, he says, how hard is it to add nitrous unit to a Magnuson supercharger equipped LS or LT, let's say?
Super easy. I mean, we actually do more blower nitrous installs than you would realize. So you can put a plate on it, a single nozzle. These guys are really getting after it. The guys that you see setting the EFI records and all these late model cars, they're sitting their blowers in, and we're actually putting spray bars in the blower, and we're blowing it right down the cylinder. And those are really the guys that are getting more after it. If you're doing 150, 200 horsepower, something like our EFI plate or a single nozzle is definitely the way to go. It's going to make good, crisp power. It's there for extra power whenever you need it, and you got drivability whenever you don't need it. So it's very simple. All you got to do is just call our tech line and talk to our tech. And we love getting guys that just have thousands of questions, because if they're asking the questions, that means they want to do it correct. And you got that opportunity to give them a great experience instead of them blowing their car up and then going, that was terrible, nitrous blew up my car. We want to, and we scare some people off, like we tell people all the time, you're going to blow your shit up, because they're calling and they're wanting to buy that $400 kit that they've seen for sale online. We're telling them, hey, this is going to be a $1,500 to $2,000 investment. And those guys will call another company and spend the $300 and then blow it up. And then they just spent quadruple the money. I tell my guys to be very blunt with the guys. Don't be a jerk, but very blunt with them. And sometimes when you tell them, hey, what you're doing, you're going to blow it up, they back up a minute, especially whenever it's their daily driver. You're like, look, if you can't afford to do this, you dang sure can't afford to be down on your daily driver and put a motor in it. And that's going to happen with any power adder. If you don't do it right and you don't tune it, you're going to tear it up.
For sure. My turn?
Yeah, your turn, Aaron.
Okay. I'm gonna poke Dave a little bit on this. So when you wreck Stitch, did you run out of talent, or what really happened?
I had my head so far up my ass. So here's what happened, right? So 2 weeks prior to this filming, somebody at the top end of the track at Ennis turned in front of me, and I couldn't shut it down, and I hit him. And it trashed the whole front of the truck, trashed the blower. We had 2 weeks to fix it because we were under contract to be at Prescott. And so we worked night and day, and Jay's Custom Fab got everything, new front clip on. Racer's Edge sent us a whole new front clip for it. We got it all on. We made it to the filming. We went to the hub dyno at Dwayne Biddle's place, and he told me, he said, Dave, this is like a 470 pass. You're going to have to turn this thing down. don't put so much nitrous to it. I've never had a boosted application that made power like this. So I'm kind of like, yeah, whatever. Right. And so I did turn it down. I turned it down to 200 on a button. But here's the problem. I showed up to this track. I had no test passes because I have one chance for a test pass, and I busted a blower belt. And so I had some next day area. We went straight into eliminations. And I already had it in my head that I was going to grab the nitrous button. I had the traction control turned completely off.
Ooh.
The truck launched. It wheelied, so it pulled all the timing to calm it down, and it started setting the front end back down. And if you watch the video, so as it's setting the front end back down, it's rolling all the timing back in, right?
Right.
As soon as it sat down, it wasn't settled. If you watch the video, you already see the rear end starting to kick, and then you see my headers, my pipes, because it has fender exit headers. You see them light up. My dumb ass was on the nitrous button from before the front wheels ever even touched. And it kicked the rear end so fast, and it was right where the track turned from concrete to asphalt.
Mm-hmm. And
it kicked it so fast, it just bit and rolled it. I remember I was like, what is going on? I was like, oh shit, I'm wrecking. Like and then I was upside down before I even bounced off the wall, and I stood on the roof all the way past the 8th mile mark. And the guy God, my mind just went blank. I should know his name. I do know his name. He's got a white Mustang. Anyways, I hit him, and I didn't know it. And he came out and he's like, man, I don't think my car's hurt too bad. And I was like, I hit you. And he's, yeah. And I said, look, dude, whatever it costs, just send me the bill. I just went through that and had to fix my truck and didn't get, sorry, go fuck yourself, nothing.
Yeah, right.
But that's what happens whenever you get on the line. Each person is responsible for their own car. I knew that, but I also knew that I just did something completely stupid. It wasn't the track's fault. It was nobody's fault but my own. And so I took and, I had his car fixed, repainted, new steering rack, new tires, new wheel, and my truck's still not fixed. I made sure that his shit was right, and I made a friend out of the deal.
Honest Dave's Nitrous Sales, right there. That's the name of that company. Honest Dave's.
Yeah,
Nitrous.
Right. Hey, I'll tell you, Dave. When we were talking about the safety side of things earlier with the nitrous bottles, I'm a huge proponent of safety stuff. Always have been. I give people a hard time because a guy will spend 10 grand on a set of cylinder heads, and then he bitches about $250 for a diaper, right? And all this kind of dumb shit, and it always pisses me off. The scenario that people don't understand, like in your scenario, you're saying you did a dumb thing, you crashed, you ended up hitting this poor guy, whatever. But what I tell people all the time, if you think that you're wearing the safety gear only for you, you're wrong, right? Like, so if that scenario was not that you did something stupid, but that you were wearing, Dickie shorts and a t-shirt racing, and then you caught on fire, and because you're on fire and trying not to die, you then crash into the other guy. That's where the safety equipment does matter for everybody's well-being, right? I've told guys before, I've been at the races and a guy is just not wearing the right stuff, and I've looked him square in the eye and said, if you lose control of your shit because it catches on fire and you run into me, you better hope you're in bad shape, because I'm going to beat your fucking ass. And and I'm a nice guy normally, but I'm telling you, like, I will climb up your ass sideways, and I'm a fat guy. It's going to hurt. Right. And those are the things, like, you are proving it right here. Like, being a stand-up guy on the racetrack is just like being a stand-up guy in real life. Like, this is how everything should work,
Well, we've had this discussion before. Basically, I said, Chad and I have had this discussion before, because it's like we have no prep races close to me, an hour in either direction, and I won't race a no prep. And it's not because my car won't hook. It's not because I'm not confident in my safety gear in my car. It's because that hero driver that hits me, yeah, I'm going to end up in jail.
A lot of those cars, there's no tech, and they've thrown these cars together, and there's no care and there's no safety. And you could show up in a car like yours where you've put your heart and soul into it and you've made sure everything was safe and everything was nice. And that dude's neglect is going to cost you a car, if not your life. That's a little concerning to me.
Well, after COVID, a lot of even divisionals now aren't doing tech anymore.
Right.
You literally walk up and hand in your tech card. I've done that at big money races for years. I mean, you go to the Million, you go to, some of the races at Huntsville, they tell you with the PA system, just hand in your tech card. And you look at some of the cars next to you and you just go, please just keep it together.
Yeah.
Chad's announced at some of those races. And I mean, it's one of those things where you're supposed to be responsible for your vehicle and your stuff. But I think that we need to bring back tech.
I wanted to touch base on something real quick. I was there whenever Lyle Barnett got burned. I was standing at the start line watching that pass.
Yep.
And that whole day had a dark cloud above it. And it was like the feeling that it gave me was just unreal of sorrow for knowing what he was going through. And then the months of doing that. And that was just one, other than his helmet being up, he had all of his safety gear. Could you imagine not having that safety gear? And whenever I got burned a few years ago, Lyle called me and I was like, dude, I am not about to whine to you. Like, yeah, okay, thank you for being concerned. And he told me, he said, Dave, there's a threshold for pain. There's a point to where pain is just pain. And he said, you found that threshold. And I'm like, no, I don't think I did. And to this day, I look at Lyle and the respect I have from him is just unreal. And he's became a voice for safety. And he's not only a hell of a driver, but he's a great human. And I'm going to tell you that I look at what he went through and I would want no part of that. And if anybody was standing on that start line, there is no way in hell they would get in that car without gloves and shoes and a fire safety gear on and a fire system in that car, because there is nothing like the feeling that put over that entire, I mean, you're talking probably 400 people at that track easy. You're talking about an atmosphere that just crushed. We all continued on for the weekend because we were there for an event. Nobody wanted to be there. There was just I can't even explain the feeling that we could see in each other, knowing what this gentleman was going through. I didn't even know Lyle very well at that time. Like I talked to him a few times and I was watching him run passes. He was definitely an upcoming name. And his career almost got ended short. And he's done phenomenal for himself. But God, man, he went through the worst thing that could have happened short of death.
It's funny you bring up Lyle. Lyle and I started this podcast together, a couple of years ago now. And Lyle and I are great friends. What's funny is I had met Lyle a couple of times before the fire. In passing, because Biggin, Eric Yost, and I have been friends for, years and years and years. But when Lyle was going through everything from his fire, I was going through my wife being in intensive care because of a tumor in her chest and in her lung, and this incredibly rare cancer diagnosis. And, we spent 38 days in the ICU, trying to get her back to being good. And the whole time, when she was awake, she's reading Facebook and looking at everything that Lyle is going through. Right. And I didn't know this until later when Lyle and I became good friends, but, he was in the hospital and Mel, his now wife, was reading my Facebook posts about our trials and tribulations. And Lyle was feeling horrible for my wife, Daphne, right? And so the two of them never met. My wife passed away before Lyle and I got to be really good friends, but there is still this connection the two of them have that is unbelievable. And like you said, good people are good people, and that's all that matters in this world. And we've forgotten that. Because we all want to hate each other if you're a Republican or a Democrat or whatever. And it's just bullshit. And that's just not how it should be. And again, I mentioned to you earlier, I love your shirt. I'm going to order me one of those. Like, I swear to God, as soon as we get done here, The thing is that those safety things are put in place not because they are a what if. Every safety regulation that exists in a race car is because somebody was hurt or died or almost died, and they made that rule. They're all reactive. There's never been one that went, oh, in case this happens. That's not how it works. So there is a reason for these rules, folks. And everybody should pay attention to them for sure. So I'm glad that you had the right stuff, because when you flipped that truck, you walked away from it, right? But that's not always the case. And if that was some pile of crap, not built right, no prep car, and you would have been wearing a t-shirt and shorts, who knows what would happen.
There's a couple things that have been instituted for safety rules that I don't fully stand behind. You say everything happens for a reason, but like a tether on the collector. Yes, I've seen maybe 2 shoot off in my life. Okay. But they got mandated across the board. You look at stuff like Bonneville rules versus like NHRA rules versus, other rules. Bonneville requires a lot more bars in their stuff, even if you're a 100-mile-an-hour car versus what you have in an NHRA car. And theirs is, like for the longest time, I don't know about anymore. I should know this, but I don't. But like a majority of the earlier NASCAR cages were all mild steel. They were never chromoly.
Right.
So I mean, there's innovations across the board that should be there, but there's also some that kind of just go, does it really need to be that strict? And I'm all about safety. I am. But it would be nice if everybody get on board. It'd be nice if all the sanctioning bodies would just come up with a general license that everybody recognizes, a chassis cert that everybody recognizes, because now we have 3 sanctioning bodies across the board in drag racing. And, one of them's kind of getting black sheeped a little bit, and which I don't think is right, because, we're not one sanctioning body's customer. We're everybody's customer that has a drag strip. It's like tech. I mean, I saw a comment in there that tech should be, at every track by Doug DeLay. He's not wrong. I mean, but the tech should be, the problem with tech is that you're trying to get everybody through, and they're only teching, well, we're going to check seat belts, and we're going to check your suit, and we're going to check your helmet. They're not checking the actual chassis. I mean, most of these tech guys, I hate to say it, are older, and we're getting older too, but they don't want to get down on their knees, and they don't want to look for a drive shaft loop. They don't want to look for the diaper. I'm being honest. I mean, the tech is not there. Allowing 200 people on a starting line. I am surprised and thankful at the same time that some trans brake hasn't failed on a 3,000 horsepower turbo car, and the thing shoots directly backwards and mows over a group of people. And, and I'll call out Duck for that. Absolutely. I mean, he shouldn't allow it, and I've been at races like Outlaw Armageddon and stuff where they allow it. And I always, when I had my guys up there, when I worked for QP, I'd tell them, stand off to the side. This is a nitrous car. You know what? Backfire happens. Make sure you have your ears covered. I don't care if you have earplugs in or not, because it's louder than shit when that intake goes up in the air. And when it goes up in the air, tuck your head, because something's coming down and we don't know where. So sorry, off the soapbox.
If you ever look where I'm standing, you'll very seldom see me on the start line. It's great for publicity to be on the start line, and they see you up there and they're like, oh, Dave's up there, right? I like to stand back from a distance. I can see what my customer's doing. If I need to be up there on the start line for something, I'll be up there. But most of the time, if you pay attention to where I'm at, I'm away from it. My kids are always wanting to be up on the start line. Well, my son could care less. But she wants to be on the start line really bad. She sees other kids up there. And I'm like, look, that's their parents' deal. You're not going up there. And there's a reason why. And it's because even the best built cars that have passed tech have malfunctions.
Yes,
How do you replace your kid? How do you live with yourself that you put them in that harm's way and it was a bad choice. Like, honestly,
Like
I
six
don't
years,
know what it cost, so.
6 years ago in Vegas, there was a Bickle car, basically top sportsman car on the starting line. Trans brake failed, and he shot backwards into the car behind him in the burnout box.
Wow, I've
And
never heard of that.
thankfully, there was a car in the water box, because if there hadn't have been, the trajectory of that car would have went into a group of people.
You
There's
remember
no
that?
doubt. Oh, I do. Yeah.
Now, it was a
So
couple years
one
ago,
more
her mom
nitrous
bounced
question, Dave, because I don't want to miss this one. Doug DeLay asked this. Doug lives in California. So his question was, do you guys sell a carb legal nitrous system for a late model LS3 Camaro? And my question to add to that is, do you need carb approval for a nitrous system, since it's only being used at the racetrack?
It's advertised as an off-road item. And there's actually some states that if you get pulled over with nitrous oxide in the car, you're charged with having a controlled substance, just like methamphetamines. So you really need to know your states. Honestly, being California is probably the worst. And so
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I can't remember what state that is, but yeah, if you're pulled over and you have nitrous oxide in the car, because they don't have any way of knowing if it has sulfur or not. So it's considered a controlled substance. And it's some of the northern states. And it's been a long time since I looked that up, but I tell everybody, look, really, you need to know your local laws. But as far as carb safe or whatever that EPA thing is that they have over there, it really has to do with, if you notice on everybody's fine print, it's an off-road. Almost all performance products are considered off-road use only now. A few years ago, we had to start sending that cancer sticker on all of our stuff because of California. And I love California as far as a place to visit because it's beautiful weather. But I walked into our management meeting and said, we're not sending shit to California. We're done. And the guys go, dude, do you see how much stuff we send to California? That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard you say. And so I was like, show me numbers. And I was like, all right, get those stickers on that product.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm a Californian, right? I mean, I live in Texas now, but I grew up in Northern California, lived in Southern California for a long time. The car scene in California, regardless of carb or any of those things, is so freaking huge that people just don't understand like it is. But what I would say, Doug, is if it were me and your Camaro, I know Doug's car. If it were me, I would put a nozzle setup in it. Because if you do it right, you can pull the nozzle out and tuck the hoses underneath the thing so that when they go and do your smog inspection, they won't even know it's there. And the beauty is it's only every 2 years, so who cares? In Texas, we have to get everything inspected once a year. California is way better because it's every other year. The only difference in Texas is there's no visual inspection, so they wouldn't know on that. But I shouldn't say that. We also have a 25-year rule. So anything 25 and older doesn't require an emissions test, regardless of the county you live in. Now, I live in Dallas County or Ellis County, and they both require emissions inspections. But again, I don't own anything that's newer than 25 years old, so I don't care.
Mine doesn't.
Yeah, you live in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Waco doesn't do any emissions either.
No, nope. Yeah.
And now you don't even get inspections.
No. You still pay the fee, but you don't have to go through.
Yeah, but in like where we're at in Dallas, Tarrant, Ellis, whatever the Houston county is, all of those counties still require an emissions test. They just don't do the safety inspection anymore, which people from California don't understand. But here they did a thing where they literally had to get in your car and drive it and make sure that the lights worked and the brakes worked and all those things. And now they don't do that. But the state of Texas, because it's as crooked as the day is long, they make sure you're still paying for that inspection, except now it's on your registration instead of you paying the small business that was getting paid to do your inspection. It's going straight to Abbott's pocket. So, don't get me started on that guy.
At least now you won't get busted
I'm sorry, say that again.
So the problem with the inspection process for me was always window tint. And so,
Yeah.
they want you to peel it off if you don't have a connection, right? But if you didn't have a
Right.
connection, they'd want you to peel the window tint off to come get it inspected. Everything I own is dark tinted. It's just,
Right.
and wherever you live in the sunny state,
Yeah.
it is the difference of night and day of driving something with a nice tint job versus not.
You
Oh, yeah.
spend $10 in the cup holder. Never had a problem.
I love that. I love that.
Sure.
I'll tell you, in my last Suburban that I had in California, I went to get it tinted. We got it and it was stone stock, and I needed the front windows, front door glass tinted to match the rest. So the guy that owned the tint place was awesome, and he's like, okay, he's like, yeah, this will match perfect. I don't even remember what percentage it was, but he's like, it'll look factory the whole way, it'll match good, blah, blah, blah. Okay. He goes, do you want me to tint the windshield? And I'm like, man, we used to tint our windshields when I was, a kid, and my buddy owned a tint shop, but we got in all kinds of trouble for that, and he goes, oh no, we can tint it with this super, super, super light one, but it'll make a huge difference in the temperature coming through the windshield of this, Suburban. And again, I lived in Southern California, like you said, all the sun. And so I went, okay, I'll do it. Oh my God. I wouldn't have something tinted without tinting the windshield ever again in my life. It was great.
It is. So, you can literally, it's the difference of wearing sunglasses or not.
Yep.
It really is.
And the only thing that I noticed that my truck did because of the tinted windshield was that my automatic headlights would come on about 5 minutes before everybody else's, because the sensor is on the dash and you got a tinted windshield over it. And I didn't think that was a bad deal at all. And the only other deal was that every once in a while you'd come out of a store and like Daphne would be sitting in the front seat of the Suburban, and you walk out of a store, and if the sun was just right, you're like, man, that windshield looks tinted right now, but I never got busted for it. Never had a cop ever ask or anything ever. So, it was all right. It was good.
My question is, when we look at cars now from the 80s, the dashes are all cracking, right? So yeah. I wonder if the tinted windshield would have saved some of that.
Oh, I'm sure. Because my Suburban, like it, like all the newer cars have, the temperature and it automatically keeps the temp. Dude, after tinting the windshield, it made such a difference in how long, or how often the air conditioner cycled on and off in the car. I mean, it was a huge difference because the windshield's the biggest piece of glass. Even in a Suburban, it's the biggest piece of glass, right? And because it's angled, all that sun coming in on you, it made a huge difference.
No doubt.
Huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
Well, boys, we're just over an hour and a half. I know Dave has other things to do too. Dave, I just want to thank you so much for, being a part of this today. And we just lost Darren, but I really appreciate you coming on the show. You are welcome anytime. It has been great to have a good conversation with you. I need to talk to you guys about some other stuff, because we need to work on doing some more stuff together on Bang Shift as well. But really everything that you do in the industry, really appreciate it. I know you hear this all the time, but it's important to make sure that you hear it again from us. Everybody speaks so highly of you all of the time. And that's just a testament to how, good of a guy you are, and what you do, as a stand-up business owner and as a member of the aftermarket. And right now that's important. I tell people all the time, we're everybody that's a member of the automotive aftermarket, we're in this boat together, and we all need to float this whole boat, right? We can compete against each other inside the boat, but we need to make sure we're not throwing people out of the boat, because it'll screw up the whole industry, so it's important. Say that again.
We definitely got to support one another.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. And not sell out to the conglomerates.
Right. There's no doubt.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
our industry isn't necessarily growing.
No.
Whenever you go to the high school, there's not hot rods out in the parking lot. So we do this because we love it, not because we're getting rich.
Yes. And it's
True.
funny when you say that there's no, there aren't hot rods in the high school parking lot. 20 years ago or so, whatever it was, when all the imports were like becoming the hot thing, everybody that was into old American cars wanted to bitch and moan about all these kids with a, EG hatch Civic or whatever. I was one of those people that said, hey, if it may not be my thing, but I don't give a shit if they're buying parts and having fun and being into cars. That's all that matters. And people argued with that. Well, you know what? I would much rather that we still had a bunch of that going on than not, right? I mean, that you sell nitrous for Civics too, right? So come on,
I mean, look at JDM.
Import. Whenever all that was happening, there was a buddy of mine that had an import store here in Waco, and I bought that company, and we were all under the same building. And so I had my domestic guys, because I worked on late model LS stuff, and we had the import. There was more shit talking going on in that building, and it was fun. It was fun, and we would be out on the cruise, and then this Honda come up, and everybody go, "Freak Dave." Because they knew I sold them that muffler,
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you, I miss those days. Those days were fun.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We've forgotten that it's okay to like different things in this country. I say I blame Whataburger and In-N-Out because at some point the world decided that you have to love one and hate the other. And now that's how we are, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or a, Ford guy or Chevrolet. Like we should be able to give each other shit about whatever our preference is, but it should be okay for somebody to like something else. I mean, I am a Chevrolet guy to the core, and I have the tattoos to prove it. And I have zero need or desire in my life for a Mopar or a Ford, okay, at all. But you know what? If you're as into your Mustang as I am into my Camaro, then you're okay in my world, right? And we need to get back to that. And we need to get back to where good people is what matters. And I don't care if you drive an EG Honda. I have an EG hatch Honda Civic now. And I've had it for a few years and I love it. And I was working on it today. And is it a race car? No, it's a cruiser, commuter vehicle that gets 50 miles a gallon and looks like hammered shit, but it's great, So, we can all get along and yeah, whatever somebody's into, as long as it doesn't hurt the rest of us, we need to be embracing that stuff,
There's no true car guy out there that will say that 2JZ is a shitty motor.
What's that?
I said there's a car guy out there saying 2JZ is a shitty motor. I mean, it's just not
You should
going to
talk to Dewey Bowie. I'm telling you, go put it in the line next to one of his cars. Dude, I have a love for all of it. I
just like horsepower. That's my deal.
Right. So, touching base on the Democrat versus Republican, I have to tell you this. So many people get so upset over this. I have my beliefs, right?
Right.
My mom is completely opposite of me. My mom's and my stepdad are huge Democrats. If I have to pick a side, I'm going to pick a Republican.
Okay.
But my mom hates Trump so bad. And I like to send her memes and get her fired up and then ignore her the rest of the day. I love my mom. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
But
yes.
We are able to get together and talk. And then after a period of time, we'll think, okay, I'm tired of hearing you. And we'll tune each other out, right? But we don't hate each other for it.
No.
We have two different completely different views of things. My parents watch every news channel. And if you want to find out what's going on, you ask them, and you just got to weed out their opinion. Right?
Right,
so
right.
It saves you hours of research because they can give you the facts. Just because somebody else doesn't believe in what you believe in, don't mean you should hate them. Because there's good and all. Some of us just have different point of views on things, and that's okay.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, Chad,
In fact,
I
it's a
love-
requirement. We need it. If everybody
Right.
believed the same thing, we would not be in good shape.
No, we need to question
I-
things more now than
I have
ever.
one more question.
Yes.
One more question. So one more question, Dave.
Yep.
So where did Be Nice come from?
Oh gosh. Okay, so it's something that I've always kind of been about. I've always been about it with talking to my employees, how I treat my employees. I like to call them my coworkers more than I do my employees because I work with them. But I always tell them, sometimes you get some customers that are really difficult. You still got to be nice, right? Everything we do is be nice. Our competitors have done everything from sign up fake usernames on forums to create stuff not realizing you can track IP addresses. There's just been so many crazy things, and I always take the high side of it. We were at a race in Oklahoma, and somebody cut down every banner we had on the facility. It's like 15 banners. And I lost my cool. And that same company has been messing with me for years. And
That was Outlaw Armageddon, wasn't it?
it was. And there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff there, dirty stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I always try to take the high road and not bash. And I lost my cool. And I did a live feed about being nice. And I'm like, I tell my guys to be nice. And all honesty, I think that employees come into some of these companies and they're trained to think a certain way. They're told certain things because of the animosity between the two companies. And in this industry, whether it's ProCharger or Vortex or, Precision versus Hearts or Nitrous Outlet versus NOS or whatever, whenever we all get to the racetrack, we're all friends. But the competition, and because we're all competitive, the competition sometimes takes the niceness out of what we do. And I think it's important that if you just treat people with the respect you want to be treated with, that's the message. Whether it's performance industry or anything else, it's just simply be nice. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you don't have to tell somebody to go fuck themselves. Sometimes you can just keep it to yourself. And the world would be a much better place for that.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I can't think of a better way to end the show than that. And I got to tell you, Dave, seriously, thank you so much for this. I am so glad you were on the show tonight, and to everybody that was tuned in tonight, thank you so much. My partner in crime, as always, Aaron, and Ryan wasn't able to make it on the show tonight. He had some stuff in his life blowing up, and so he missed this one. But I know he'll be sad to have missed it. Dave, you are welcome anytime on the show, and I really appreciate it. You guys stick with me here, and I'm going to end the live feed, and then we'll talk another minute. But everybody that's out there, again, thank you so much. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we will see you in 2 weeks for another episode of Beards, Burnouts, and Beer. And I don't know who our special guest is going to be yet, but we'll figure it out, and we'll let you know. And make sure that you're nice. Be nice. Use that. For the next 2 weeks, I want everybody to work on being nice. And then you can check in with us in 2 weeks on our next show and let us know how it worked out. So again, everybody, thank you so much. Peace out. We appreciate you guys. See ya.